Dr. Joel Ingersoll is a New Jersey licensed psychologist and renowned impact performance coach for students, parents, business leaders, and corporations. He has a PhD in clinical psychology and an MA in applied social psychology and a master coach certification. He joins us today. I think I got it all right, but you sound very important, Doctor, and I'm glad you're here.
Thanks. It's good to be here, Eric.
You know, we've covered a lot of somewhat troubling information, certainly about the travel industry, but man, it's kind of crazy out there, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. I mean, and personally, I've had to cancel a couple of upcoming trips I was really looking forward to.
The officials are saying, stay home. And that means all your family members stay home. And so are you seeing more and more patients and folks calling saying, man, this is a little tougher than I thought it was going to be?
Yes, and certainly it extends across all family members, whether it's a high school kid who now has to do online learning from home, which initially a lot of them thought was a really good idea until they start missing their friends, to parents who have to stay home and work from home or are losing jobs and everything in between. Really, it's really quite concerning.
We're certainly, of course, not going to make light of, look, this virus is, from a health perspective, extremely dangerous, very contagious, and it's affecting a lot of people from a physical standpoint, and by all accounts will continue to do so until we get through it. What I'd like to focus a little bit with you today is, what about the rest of us? How are we supposed to cope with this new normal of forget about the job loss. Let's just, for argument's sake, say, no, I am at home and I'm working from home. My company has allowed me to telecommute and I'm using Zoom as we are today, meeting with the team. And sort of how do we deal with this new normal, especially when we're being told, this is only going to go on for a couple of weeks. Oh, wait, it might go on for a couple of months. Oh, wait, it might go on for 5 to 6 months. Psychologically, we're left with, we kind of don't know how long this could go on. How do we deal with that?
I think that it starts with a mindset, Eric, and I have to do it. We all have to do it. And that mindset, at the very core of it, is a commitment to constantly assessing and adjusting throughout each week, even throughout each day. And it might mean how we proactively fill out like a daily calendar or schedule, even down to the words that we use when we fill out that calendar. So let me give you an example of that. So many kids that I'm working with, are those that fill out a calendar, might write in, 11 o'clock math, and they're rolling their eyes and they're bored and they don't see the point. Well, what I'm challenging them to do, rather than label the task math, you label it the benefit first, which is increased problem-solving skills. And under that, we put math. Rather than exercise, we put increased strength and endurance training. So we use these more powerful words because I don't think that there is one specific answer in terms of like how to do this. We have to pepper ourselves constantly with things we listen to, with things we read, with things we write. And we just have to keep re-engaging in that. It's going to be key.
This has got to be a theme that you deal with under normal circumstances in your practice, which is, self-reflection is something that, you might be asking patients to, in your own way, of course, and getting to this is the challenge, I would imagine, from your perspective. But, kind of reminding us and showing us how to look inward, because this is a very personal experience we're going through, even though it's a shared experience with, albeit the rest of the world, the rest of your city, the rest of your county. We're all sharing this. However, to get through it effectively, just from a mindset, it's very personal, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things that maintains just general fulfillment and happiness is lifestyle and what we choose to do. And they may be very simple things that we take for granted. Like I love going to the grocery store. And all of that has changed. So it's really challenged everyone. It's such a unique challenge to reinvent how we do things, reinvent our lifestyles. And that takes a lot of work. And fortunately, there are a lot of people out there in my field and in other fields who are making themselves available to people to really help with that, because people rely on those lifestyle behaviors, and if they're not participating in them and they get upended, a lot of them just don't know what to do.
Well, that brings me to this point, which is, even if you're not, look, we can go down some very dark paths here for our own reasons. It doesn't, and of course, it doesn't matter what the reasons are, quite frankly. But I mean, step one, put everybody in your house and tell you not to go to the grocery store anymore. And by the way, when the Amazon boxes arrive, spray those down with Lysol and keep them on your porch for 2 days. I mean, you start adding this stuff up, and for someone, can this new normal lead to depression, anger, bad moods, irritability? Is this a recipe for things that we need to pay attention to now?
Yes, potentially, yes. And you bring up a number of points there, and that lead to that potential. For example, I may have in my family, I may have a very different level of comfort opening a box in my garage. I might not be the one who sprays it down with Lysol, for example. Now, my wife may spray it with 2 cans, but if I'm not doing it, and therein lies conflict. So what we're starting to see is, or what I'm starting to see is, certainly conflict arising at home, even over how to care for the mail and how to, handle grocery shopping and things like that, because there's a lot of uncertainty, obviously, with this virus, and uncertainty in general is rocket fuel for anxiety.
Well, but that leads to the question, of course, which is, let's start from where we are today. I mean, maybe this will not be the last time we speak together on this program. I have a feeling you'll be back with us, hopefully, if you'll allow us to join you. What can we do? What are some simple steps now to begin to be aware of those things so that we don't go down those roads and take them too far? Of course, we're all going to be in bad moods. We're all going to have mood swings from time to time. But we're talking about, really preparing for the future. How do we do that today when it comes to that conflict resolution?
So I think that, and in part it goes back to mindset. I also think it's, if we kind of define our families and friends in part as accountability partners, to make sure, because here's the thing, I mentioned lifestyle before, and that how that helps to maintain personal fulfillment. Well, now a lot of it's not there. Not a lot of those options are not there. And so, are we sleeping more? Are we drinking alcohol more? Are we eating differently? Are we exercising less? What are we doing and not doing that could either increase the likelihood or make worse an experience of depression, reactive depression to this situation for some, or make chronic depression even worse, which has a lot to do with our perspective of things. Well, I can't get to the gym, or I'm never going to be able to go back to college or school. And so these things become layered. So it's very important to increase our self-awareness with how we're thinking, what type of thinking we're doing, and how we're engaging in lifestyle behaviors, what we are doing or what we're not doing. That could either increase the intensity of it or lower it. And I think that we have to make very realistic adjustments. So for example, if I'm meeting with someone and they're really bummed because they can't get to the gym and lift the weights that they're used to lifting because they don't have 600 pounds of dumbbells lying around. Well, we need to reframe that. What what a successful exercise experience is. So it's not going and maxing out the number of reps you do or the amount of weight that you do. It's checking off the box that you exercise, period. That's a big plus.
It's really interesting. Talk about getting back to basics, but I mean, I would imagine you talk about these themes in your practice as well without this virus, which is, okay, let's take a look at our sleep. Let's take a look at what we're eating. Let's take a look at what we're drinking. Let's take a look at, we know some of the day-to-day activities have changed. We know that by circumstance. But what are you doing with those changes? And furthermore, I think you brought up a really interesting point, which is, our minds are incredibly powerful, like I'm telling you. But I mean, we can talk ourselves into some dark places. But the good news is, can't we talk ourselves into some bright places too?
Absolutely. And so that drills down to a really core concept, and that concept is the power of thinking in relation to things like anxiety and depression, right? So it's one thing to have a thought, Eric, and we have millions of them a day. Now, it's something different to believe a particular thought. So if I have some catastrophic belief about, this week and how it's going to go, and there's nothing on my calendar, and what am I going to do? I mean, you hear those what if, those kinds of questions are often connected to things like anxiety and depression. Now, on the flip side of that, what's really critical is that, one, we begin to catch ourselves in that negative type of thinking. And if we're generating that, then we also can generate something positive. And there is a lot out there to do in order to facilitate that.
Well, and that brings up another excellent point. If someone watching today may not even think, oh my gosh, I've got some serious issues going on in my mind. They might not even be thinking that far down the path. They may be on the precipice of, I wonder if I'm in the right headspace, for lack of a better description. There are resources available to people right now as they're watching this. If they're concerned about this issue, they can pick up the telephone. That has nothing to do with, perhaps taking an appointment face-to-face with somebody. There are numbers to call right now, correct?
Oh, absolutely. There's numbers to call. There's websites. I mean, and if people aren't even ready for that step, which I think is a great step, but the idea of, well, what are you looking at on your phone or online? Like, are you constantly following negative news? Now, that could be a maintaining factor to something like depression or anxiety. If I'm watching all this, the impact of this pandemic, and I'm noticing that that's associated with a negative feeling, I might want to dial down on the amount of television that I'm watching or news that I'm watching, and flip to whether it's a psychologist or a coach or somebody who's on Instagram who's posting very positive things. Even the stuff that you're doing is just awesome. It's very positive. It's very moving and uplifting. We need to spend time there.
I really appreciate that, because once again, a lot of us spend our time thinking, oh my gosh, of course I watch the news, or I read online every day. That was part of my routine. The Today Show has huge ratings, and has since the 1950s, for a reason. People, they want to know, they want to be informed, they want to blah. But with this, even someone who is passively paying attention to the news, if you're internalizing it, what I'm hearing you say is, maybe you dial that back a little bit. If you watch an hour of television news a day, for instance, and it's causing you just, even the semblance of anxiety, maybe you dial it back to half an hour. See what happens. Absolutely.
You use the word, I think, which is a really critical word there too, routine. And I think this speaks to the significance of, like, what does my routine look like, and how does it contribute to the way that I feel and how I'm thinking and my perspective on things, and what do I need to change? Because there's really no excuse for not changing one's routine. Like, And this morning, for example, like I got up early. Usually I would go to the gym. Well, there's no gym to go to. So I took a walk for 30 minutes, which was 2 miles. And a little bit of it was uphill. And then I came home and I had coffee and and you don't have to do it my way. I don't want you to drink my green smoothies or anything like that because they're gross.
You've been trying to get me to drink those for years. Think how healthy I would be, or healthier I would be if I had.
You'd be a machine. It'd be unbelievable. No, I think that whole thing about like morning routine, evening routine, and how we anchor our day with positivities, it's really crucial. It's stressful enough, and we have control over that. We can do things.
I think that's a really great concept to take away today, and I feel bad because we have to go. But will you come back again? Okay. Well, because I love it, because the concept here is, I can't speak for everyone. I certainly feel like, man, when it comes to this virus, I am out of control. I have no say as to whether or not this virus affects this person physically. This person dies from this. I can't control the spread of it. I can't en masse. But what you're saying, which I'm absolutely loving, which is there are things in my control. The social distancing, paying attention to the official information, and what I do with that information, and what we collectively do with that. That puts you on a path to potential success.
It does. I mean, look, you're in the travel world, right? Think of this. Those thoughts and fear in and of itself, there's energy to it, right? Now we don't like it. We don't like anxiety. We don't like that word, but there's energy to it. The big question is, what do you do with that? How do you use the fuel of that, to use a travel phrase, for self-improvement during this time, for personal development during this time? Because there are a small percentage of people that are actually doing that. They are using the fuel productively. It stinks, like it's awful. We know this. Now, if we take that thought and label and kind of set it in a box, the key is to continue to trust taking action in spite of negative thinking and negative feeling. If we're able to use the fuel, what ultimately happens, Eric, is that the thinking slowly becomes more optimistic. The feeling starts to become better. I'm feeling less anxious. I'm feeling less depressed because I'm trusting positive action. Trust taking action.
Dr. Joel, people pay you big money for this advice, and certainly you're doing your part, even today, from the comfort of your own home, to help all of us get through it. Thank you very much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me on. Stay healthy.